This is Donald Adams. I'm also known as Doc Stars to our Sound Stars frequency group. YouTube channel is DocStar77. The purpose of this video is to offer support to those who are doing serious research into the phenomena of the black-eyed children. Some of the content of this video may be reusable by people that are investigating other aspects of the paranormal. What I'm hoping here is that we can introduce you to some methods, protocols, and tools, especially if you're on a budget, to support you in finding your target and extracting meaningful information. This video is ad hoc. I'm doing it really quick. I haven't had a lot of time to prepare. What spurred me into making this video was by accident I came across a very interesting video by the small research team at Fantastic Daily YouTube channel online, and they made a discovery of a low frequency signal artifact purportedly associated with the phenomena of sightings of the black-eyed children. So that caught my attention, and the nature of the work that I'm involved with is in designing interference patterns through frequency modulation with applications towards engineering consciousness and behavioral states. And so a lot of the observations that team made was very much in correspondence to my own observations over time. So that's a great confirmation, obviously, for both of us. I want to point something out also. I'm going to dive right into the content, and this is going to be a brief video covering those topics that I mentioned. But I want to just offer applause and support for the team at Fantastic Daily. It's very easy to critique someone or some group as being sensationalistic or you know, not professional, that sort of thing. But I've reviewed a number of their videos, and you know, a lot of the big breakthroughs in science happens with people that are part-time scientists. You know, they're amateur scientists, and a lot of times an individual or a group may not have adequate resources or time, and they may not get the kind of support that they need in a timely fashion, and yet they continue forward. And my understanding of the team at Fantastic Daily is that, granted, they're doing fringe science, but under the circumstances and the resources that they have, not having a lot of time, you know, or probably proper funding or support, they're making progress. You know, they're picking something up, and you know, while this is sort of an unknown area, you have a couple of people that are making dedicated effort to pursue something that interests them on their own time and on their own dime. So I just offer applause and support for that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to offer feedback. So in relation to both the efforts that they're making in the hopes that this might support them. They've asked for input from people, and so, you know, since my background as a science researcher, specifically in the area of, you know, frequency research, is relevant to what they're going through, I felt that would be worthwhile of me to do. So I wanted to just offer some feedback, first of all, on the signal that they've picked up. Two things come to mind. One is there's a process or a mechanism in microbiology, and it's called quorum signaling. This happens with certain kinds of bacterial colonies. And so when you have a host organism that is infected by a given bacterial colony, what happens is the bacterial cells use a process called quorum signaling to essentially notify particulate members of the colony as to where a food source is found or how to avoid a threat. And I'm not going to go into all the techniques of it, but basically the way it works is, you say you have an animal, it gets a bacterial infection, the infection, enters the bloodstream, and it, or whatever system it's moving through, and imagine that it's like a disparate cloud that's tenuously stretched throughout the organism, often in different sort of, clumps or clusters of different densities. So in some cases you might have the bacterial colony relatively focused in a given region in the body, and it remains, more or less in that area. Other times it may move somewhat uniformly, other times it might move in sort of disparate clusters. But the way quorum signaling works is that, and some people have speculated that the nature of this signaling is akin to almost like a spooky action at a distance, or a non-local type of communication. And the reason that this is speculated on is because if the colony is stretched through a vast region throughout the host, and there's different areas in the host that is, say, nutrient-rich for the colony, then messaging will occur within the bacterial colony to notify all the particulate members that they should go in a given direction towards the food. Likewise, if there's a threat, say an antibiotic is introduced to the system and it begins to distribute itself, then the bacteria may become aware of this and they'll try to get away from it. But because you're dealing with a cloud, some of the particulate members, individual, bacterial cells, will become distant or remote to the main cloud. And so what will happen is the message will reach the different particulate members in different areas, and the signal will tell them either to, come towards the host, or to avoid a certain area. And consider that, you're dealing with a very small microorganism, and the distance, from, say, a bacterial cell that may be in your elbow as opposed to your gut, for us it's very small. It might be just like a foot and a half. But to the bacteria, it represents an astronomically enormous, proportional distance. And so what I wanted to mention about the signal artifact that you've discovered is that if you're drawing this phenomena and your signal output is weak, the nature of the transmission, although I'm guessing it's acoustic, you're probably emitting it as a weak acoustic sound, the method of the transmission may not be what it appears. So if you have an unknown entity that seems to be in human form, and it's somehow picking up your signal from a great distance away, when you're emitting the acoustic signal, as soon as it's emitted, it may be transversing a distance in a very different way than you may imagine. A couple of things to consider. One is you could try experimenting with different amplitudes of the output. So you could go from, say, like a weak acoustic output to a very loud one. The other thing is you could try different kinds of mediums of transmission. So for instance, instead of emitting the signal as an acoustic one, you could experiment with emitting it as a varying magnetic field. And all that basically means is that you could, for instance, have the signal which is recorded in a digital format played back not as audio, but through a device that converts the audio signal into a varying magnetic field. A simple way to do that, you can either purchase, or you could do it yourself, make or that sort of thing, just a coil, just a magnetic coil. and output the signal to that coil. If you don't have that, like a simple way to do it is get a decent audio speaker, you know, like one that can handle like a very large power output, and just strip the membrane off, and then play your signal through that, and play it loud. And you might find that the evoked response may increase in proportion to the amplitude strength, even if it's output as a magnetic field. And there's other kinds of formats that you could use. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that the crew at Fantastic Daily has apparently noticed what may be a temporal distortion. One of the videos I saw, there was disparity between clocks, and I'm going to assume that everything that I'm viewing coming from the production staff on their end is legitimate, and you know it's as presented. I get that's the impression I get. So one of the things that can happen with time distortions is when there is a gravitational interrupt. So if the local gravitational field is perturbed, then this can result in temporal distortions. And there's a precedent for linking some of the artifacts that Fantastic Daily has observed with a few other interesting tidbits of information from other researchers. There's a fellow in Italy, Ruggero Santilli. He's a professor. He's got a lot of critique. A lot of his work has been he's been scolded by mainstream science. But when you take a look at his background and you realize the sheer number of patents that he's got and awards, national science awards, you know, that sort of thing, you start to wonder, you know, how valid that critique is. And he's also done a lot of really fascinating research into mathematics. And as an example, he's been researching something called isodual theory in math. If you have a science background, you take an objective look at his work, the veracity of it really stands out. One of his supposed key discoveries the last while was in the area of telescope modifications. And he claims that he's been picking up entities through the modification of the lenses in telescopes. Instead of having convex lenses, which is normal in optics, he's using concave lenses. And I won't go into all the techniques of that, but the basic idea is it's when you have a convex lens in optics, especially in the arrangement that Santilli is using, what it does is it moves the optical signal to the edge or fringe perimeter of the lens. So in other words, instead of the light being concentrated and focalized into the center, it's being scattered and then redistributed around the perimeter, and then the information is interpreted therein. And what he's basically saying is that there is an inverse or converse relationship between a gravitational image and just like a simple light image. Not simply orthogonal, but the entity or the image that's collected is it's assembled in a very different way. And when you take a look at the data and the imagery and the mechanical setup of his work, and then you contrast and compare this to the acoustic low-frequency signal that Facebook or that Fantastic Daily has picked up, there may well be a correlation between the two, because this asymmetric, very intense noise distortion, which they describe as a static electricity, actually may well correlate mechanistically and conceptually to Santilli's convex lens arrangement. And so what that means is that the data or the information that they're picking up, the data set that they're assembling from the acoustic artifact, may actually represent the same kind of transmission. In other words, it may be that the content of the information is not being captured entirely, rather just a peripheral kind of energetic displacement of it, which is heard as static electricity. And a couple of the things I wanted to mention here, also in the comments, or not the comments, yeah, in the comments section of this video, you'll see a link, and in that link there will be, if you click on the link, you'll get access to a web page where I've assembled a bunch of notes, which will include, for the serious researcher, suggested tools, methods, protocols, references that you can use in your own research. And my hope is that this will also support Fantastic Daily in their work. Maybe help take a little bit of the pressure off you. Maybe help optimize your results a little bit. So a couple of things I wanted to just bounce off you is there's a tool called Decarta. Again, this will be in the link section of this video. And if you don't have something like this yet, when you're doing your analysis of these frequency signals, you're doing modifications to it. This is a free tool. You can also, purchase different professional levels of it. It's probably one of the best ones out there, and the reason that I say that is that it was developed initially by an individual and team that were engaged in clinical, professional level EEG analysis. And so this is a frequency analysis and modification tool that is literally worth about $25,000 or more US. And the reason that it's so cheap is because they happen to be in a position where, because of their experience and their requirements, they had to assemble a lot of different parts in place and then kind of distill it, and they ended up with the software. But so the link to that tool will be in there. It lets you do data acquisition, real-time analysis. It's got a scope, spectrum, spectrogram, signal generator. It's a high-precision, lab quality tool. So what that basically means is that when you're doing analysis on different frequency artifacts, it'll make your job a lot easier. It'll speed a lot of things up. You'll also know what to look for, and it's tailored exactly towards organic sampling. So it's made for organic specimens. I wanted to mention something too, just as a side note. Some people may take issue with what I'm saying, and I'm just proposing this for the interest of science. And I'm not suggesting anybody necessarily go out and do this. I'm just saying that I think that this is probably a good idea at some point. If these entities are real, if they exist, it would probably be a good idea at some point to isolate one and take a tissue sample, preferably multiple tissue samples. Because if tissue samples could be obtained, an awful lot could be learned from that. I'm just going to toss that out there. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention too is because of the limitation of energy resources and explicitly time, one thing that would serve you very well is the ability to forecast events, episodes, and incidents in advance. In other words, if you could know days and even hours, even to the minute, of when this phenomena is most probabilistically going to appear, and in tandem with that, if you could know the spatial coordinates, in other words, the direction, the distance, the nature of the environment, if you could know these two things together, it would make your job an awful lot easier, and it would remove a lot of stress from you. And I'm proposing that this is very possible. I'm proposing that to a range of within 70 to 80%, this information can be derived. And I'm also going to suggest that the patterns of behavior of this phenomena is likely cyclic and predictable. And some tools exist that will allow you, with a fine degree of precision, to determine the best probabilistic windows. So what that means is, as an example, instead of having to, if you're doing research every month over the course of a year, if you put in so many hours every day, every month, and you're neglecting rest, or you're neglecting family time, or you're neglecting just your own personal time for regeneration, rejuvenation, relaxation, that sort of thing, that's going to wear on you after a while. And I'm going to suggest that it's highly likely, out of any given month, on average, with some degree of variance over the course of a year, that you may actually only have 4 to 5 time windows for days, evenings, out of a given month. There might be 7, there might be 8 days. And outside of that, the fish aren't biting. So that means that if you know when to go fishing, what time, what day, what evening, you have all that time left for yourself. You don't have to miss the opportunities. You'll know what the opportunities are in advance. And I have tools that do that job pretty well. And I have a high workload. I have a lot of my own commitments. But I would be interested in offering a degree of support for a period of time for that, especially if it makes your results and your success rate improve. And in that link that I mentioned in the comments section, you'll see examples of the kinds of chart data that I'm talking about. It demonstrates how that works. And what else did I want to cover here? Other equipment that you might want to investigate, you've probably already thought about this. I strongly suspect that that if there is a low-frequency signal associated with these entities, that it probably has to do with a displacement effect from a gravitational distortion. I think a static is probably comparable to the event horizon of a black hole. I mean, you may be dealing with I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not saying this is what I think or this is what I believe, but if these entities are highly disharmonious in nature, imagine if they, being organic, or at least they seem to be somewhat organic, imagine if they were carrying around inside of themselves a biological equivalent of a black hole singularity, or just something conceptually that was comparable to that. And then this noise or this static that you're experiencing, this could be like I said, comparable to the event horizon of of a stellar black hole. However, either correspondent with that or separate to this, one thing that may be helpful, a low-cost solution, not difficult to set up, would be to employ a Rodive diode detector. And so this has got a really robust history with EVP, electronic voice phenomena, and it would allow you to detect, record, and then analyze and manipulate the signal on a completely different level. And over time, as you have the opportunity, I think that it would serve you well to try signal manipulation through different vectors, and also record the signal through different vectors. So as an example, the current artifacts that you have now, you could try manipulating in different ways. We already talked about changing the amplitude, so increasing it, changing the delivery format, so not just acoustic, but also as a varying magnetic field or RF, that kind of thing. But I don't know how familiar you folks are with some of Patrick Flanagan's work. Some of his early research had to do with scalar interferometry in schools of fish, and kind of analyzing the communications envelope. A lot of similarities between that communication and bacterial quorum signaling also. And so if you were to use a Rodive diode detector in tandem with your normal acoustic recording setup, you might get an entirely different data set result, which might reveal an awful lot more information about what's going on. There could be sub-vocalizations happening. Other things that might be worth experimenting with, just conceptually. I don't know what your take on David Oates' reverse speech is. I think there's some value there. There's a correspondence between David Oates' reverse speech and Flanagan's studies into the communications with schools of fish, insofar that sometimes the information embedded is inverse. In other words, there can be a lot of information contained that has significance and meaning, and even if it comes across as an unintelligible non-English language, this might actually change if you use reverse speech. One of the things to keep in mind is that if there is a gravitational association with this communication, it may not be that they're speaking in an unknown language. If there's a temporal distortion, I'm just throwing this out there as an idea, they may be talking at a different frequency rate, or they may be talking backwards, or they may be talking in a way that sounds backwards to us. And there's a whole bunch of reasons as to why I think that may be the case, but I won't go into it here because I want to keep this video short. I'm just throwing that out there as ideas to investigate. You know, it's fairly simple, you know, to take your signal artifact, try reversing it. Now, the other thing I wanted to cover here really quickly is, let's see, the nature of their language and signaling. There's a section in the page, in the link in the comments section. It's just titled Nature of Their Language and Signaling. If you get a chance, there's more information about that in there you might find helpful. And what else? Also some information I provided to you on biomagnetic fields. There's a lot of good content coming out of the PEMF field, pulse electromagnetic fields, in application to biological applications. And so there's some content and links in the file in there, and I think it would probably be helpful in the pursuit of what you folks are doing. And that's it. That's kind of the bulk of just what I wanted to share initially. That should be helpful, I hope, in perhaps saving you time, energy, and effort in optimizing results. Lastly, insofar as your own personal security goes, I'm saying this both to the fantastic daily crew and also to other serious researchers that are out there. Trying to figure out how I say this so that it comes across correctly. Don't want to sound like I'm simply plugging a product, because I'm not. And if you're in a situation where you're dealing with unknowns, and part of those unknowns is you are not aware of what the the nature, the type, the speed, or the size of kickback might be. In other words, if you're stirring up a hornet's nest, you don't know how many hornets are in there, and you don't know things like, you know, how quick can you get away, how fast can they fly, how badly can they sting you. I think you're really smart. I really applaud that you, in your second experiment, that you were doing it remotely, attached to a tree, instead of bringing it to your home. I think that just makes sense. I think it's possible to set up your experiment remotely in a way where it cannot be damaged or destroyed. Obviously, that takes a bit more effort, probably a bit more cost. But I think that's a smart way to go. You know, doing your, if you're going to bait something potentially dangerous, you know, misdirect it at least. You don't want to have it, you know, visiting, you know, your own personal safe spot. But regardless of your situation, if you find yourself in a scenario where you're getting attention from something that may be a threat, there are frequencies that I've designed. They've been field tested for a number of years by a large number of people, including a robust variety of serious in-field paranormal investigators that help get rid of, I mean, just different words that we can use, but, you know, dark influences. And so far, these are frequency tracks that you can play acoustically as sounds, you know, or certainly you can broadcast them as a silent, varying magnetic field. We haven't seen these frequencies fail in field yet. Every single report that we've gotten back has been one of success, and you know, some of the you know, some of the results and stories that have come back, you know, have certainly included like a very real, concrete manifestation of a negative threat. You know, like an entity type threat. You know, some people had seen things, etc. And the way that it works is you simply play these frequencies, preferably at a certain magnitude or volume, and they bathe the local environment in informational patterns that are highly toxic and repulsive to these kinds of phenomena. So if you find yourself in a situation where it's late at night and you've got a wife and kids in the house, and you've got to go out and there's tension, I would strongly suggest that this kind of defense mechanism, just simply having these frequencies playing loudly in the home while you're gone, will probably provide a lot of calmness of mind, to you, the person that's having to, leave, and it will probably provide a great deal of consolation, comfort, and security for the people that are in that space. So, like I say, they haven't failed, and I don't see them failing. They work really well for what they do. If you're an individual and you're out in the field and you're exposed to what you feel is a threat, and you're under pressure, having the means to switch these frequencies on, and preferably switch them on at a reasonable volume, I think would give you a lot of latitude, certainly for escape, I believe for protection. I would certainly love to, if anyone viewing this video finds themselves in a situation where they're surrounded or confronted by one or many of these kinds of entities, and they have the opportunity to switch these frequencies on at full volume and then record the results, like actually record the effects of the results on these black-eyed children, I'd love to see it. So anyway, links to all of this stuff will be in the video. I hope this helps, and if you have questions, my time is limited. You're welcome to send questions to my email address at doc_stars@yahoo.com. That's at doc_starz@yahoo.com. I can't respond to all inquiries, so if you have an inquiry that's serious and urgent and it's a legitimate concern, I'll do the best I can to get back to you. But anyway, I hope this helps people that are involved in this kind of research, and I wish you happy hunting.